So the big secret is revealed. 1 week ago I asked you what are those crayons, and they are artist soft oil pastels from arrtx, and I was afraid to use oil pastels. My fears are gone after trying them, and today I'm gonna show you how to blend them and how to make an art journal page. So stay tuned. Hi you guys, thank you so much for coming to my channel. It's Asia Marquet here, Lemon Creation, and as I mentioned, I'm gonna be using artist soft oil pastels from arrtx. We have 48 colors in this beautiful box, plus I got a small box of white oil pastels because they are used for blending. So like that I have a lot to work with, and I wanted to try them as much as I can. I even watch few tutorials. I pick up some important info about the oil pastels, and today I tried a really beginner project. I think this for the second time in my hand the oil pastels. I've never had that many colors, and I was a little reluctant. I was not sure if I'm gonna manage to make something out of it, simply because for me they were always a synonym of something messy and you know, something I will never use. I was mistaken. They are a little messy, that is true, but you can blend them beautifully, really beautifully. I am so surprised with that. So I made the swatches and I used the tissue to kind of spread them and remove this stickiness, so like that I can actually preserve the paper with it. And I decided to leave it like that. So you can see the colors are really beautiful. There are some of the colors which are absolutely my favorite. And so based on what I watched and what I learned from other tutorials, and I think I watched like 10 of them, I decided to actually do some blending, because that's what interests me the most, I think, with these crayons, as I am not a painter, so I cannot do a like beautiful landscape. But basically there are a few ways of blending the oil pastels, and I'm using mostly one. I am blending with the piece of tissue. You can use a piece of cloth. You can use cotton disc for makeup remover. You can use Q-tip, linseed oil, blending stamp. You can also blend with finger. There are also some solvents you can use with them. But you know, it's just, you can choose whichever suits you. For me, a piece of tissue was perfect. And because I'm learning and experimenting at the same time, I always try my way of doing things, yes, I'm trying. I decided also to use 2 types of paper. Apparently Bristol is very good to do the, how do you call it, to do the oil pastels or even watercolor paper, I heard. And so for that purpose I use a piece of Bristol, or even it's mixed media paper, which is completely flat, and other which is watercolor paper. You're gonna see this one is actually watercolor paper, and to be honest I prefer the paper which is smooth. I feel like the blend is much nicer, but then everything depends on what you want to do. So that's all for the blending part of it. As always, I know that some artists actually leave it. They don't really, you know, remove this this texture, this oil texture from their paintings. I prefer to actually remove it, because like that I am sure that I don't have a transfer. And anyway, I am not making paintings, so you know, they're not gonna hang somewhere else. They're gonna be put in between other pages in my art journal. So I don't want this transfer of this, you know, oily texture. So I prefer to actually remove it a little with a tissue, for example. And I also learned that you cannot use the same, you know, paper underneath, because you will get some transfer from the previous colors, which happened in my case. I got some yellow and red transfer on the blue paper, which I removed with the tissue, but still, you know, every time you actually change the colors, change the background paper or the, you know, the scrap paper which you have under. so cool with the oil pastel is the fact that you can clean them very, very well, you know, just with a piece of tissue. So that I like very much. And also, so later on, because I tried to see if even when I blend the colors with the tissue, if I remove this oily texture, if they are still getting, you know, transfer of colors to my fingers or to other paper. And they do, but that's also the, you know, that's oil pastel, so you cannot avoid that. But you can use fixative or hairspray, or you can put them under the glass if you're making a painting, you know. But I use the hairspray. I don't have a fixative. I use quite often hairspray, and that worked quite nicely at the end. So while I'm finishing my blending, I wanted to tell you that arrtx actually for the next 4 days, including today, they are making Prime Day deal with 20% offer. So if you want to purchase the pastels or I guess other products of arrtx, you can just or you should do it in those 4 days, because 20% off is quite a nice deal. And I'm gonna leave you for a moment with music, and I'm gonna come back to you when I'm gonna be making an art journal page. So see you soon. For this particular blend, I decided to use a white stick because I kind of forgot about it, and I wanted to know how does it affect the blend. It actually works quite nicely, but as it's usually the case with white markers, for example, with which you blend other markers, it gets the color a little bit brighter, not brighter, a little bit more pastel-y, I'd say. Because you add, of course, white on top of the other colors, so it makes it, you know, less striking, of course. And let's start with the art journal page. I took a page which is quite textured. I think it's actually a cheap watercolor paper, which I'm using quite often for my art journaling, because it's perfect for art journaling. And so I decided to add like 3 colors, I think. No, finally I'm gonna finish with 4, I think. And I'm blending them with a little bit of with a cotton disc. And I don't mind that the colors are mixing together, so I'm using the same cotton disc, and now I'm using a little bit of Q-tip and adding a little bit of color here and there, trying to kind of make this, you know, like I usually do, like mix of color in one place, so from one side of the paper. And it's quite nice. It gives a little bit of like this dusty feeling almost. It's really nice. I wanted to add a little bit of colors and see how they react if I make them, spread them a little with the Q-tip on top of everything else. The colors are really nice, but yes, if you, of course, if you use the Q-tip, for example, to blend them, they're not gonna be as striking and as beautiful if you were to leave the texture on top of the page. but I don't want to leave the texture. I think the people who are leaving the texture of oil pastels are mostly the professional artists, which I'm not, so I'm leaving it as it is. So when I'm reviewing the product, I want to know what can I do with it. So in this case, because I am an art journal mostly, I wanted to see if I can stamp on top of the oil pastels. And I'm using, just in case, the stamping platform from Tonic and Tim Holtz, and the VersaFine ink, which is a permanent ink, so I guess you can use StazOn and archival ink, and probably you will even get better results because VersaFine is mostly used for the paper, like for the, just for the traditional paper and paints. But I may be mistaken here. I'm using my stamp along the lines, just stamping all over the place on the page and also on the pastels. But as you can see, I have no problem whatsoever with stamping on the pastels, and I have to actually tell you that because the paper is textured and I use the oil pastels, they kind of stuck in the small crooks and crannies of the textured paper, and the stamping image is even more crisper if I was to stamp just like that on the paper. In one go I got a really beautiful image, so that way is super cool. And of course after drying, because it's a VersaFine ink, so it needs a tiny bit of time to dry. After drying, the ink doesn't move. As far as I've noticed, it doesn't move, so it's perfect for the texture paper. When you want to stamp on top of that, this is actually a super cool thing to do, because you have beautiful colors, and on top of that you kind of fill up this texture paper, and then you can stamp without any problems. And I'm adding a little bit of this kind of a old packaging thing, which I'm using for stamping quite often, just to make the the page more to my liking. Also, I've done one mistake which I shouldn't have done, and it's completely my fault. I should have think better, but I wanted to check everything, so I use my Uni Pin fine liner. And yes, when you don't have too much of oil pastel texture, like on the edges of the of these colors, it writes on the paper, but don't do it because it's oil pastel. So after all this oil texture will get into the nib of your pen and you will break it. So I kind of managed to make it, but I wouldn't do it twice. To add a little bit of interest to the page, I decided to use this die from Art Journal, and I don't use the whole die. I will use just pieces of it, which I am gonna also colorize with a black oil pastel, because if I'm going for oil pastels, why not to use it? If I usually, when I don't cut the die, because I usually prepare my dies in advance, I cut few of them and I just keep them in the packet. If I don't have a die of black color, I usually just kind of put it on my old ink pad, like the archival ink, and just move it around with the piece of tissue like that. It's getting colorized. You can of course spray it with a black paint also, or with acrylic paint, but today I decided to go for this option, to use the oil pastels, and it's actually quite a good option. It gives me a better color than the ink pad. So if you watch my videos, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes I just colorize the dies with the ink pad, but this one is actually quite nice, to colorize it with oil pastels, because they really get everywhere. And I decided to go for this doll because she is kind of like kind of vintagey, almost like the background of this page. So I thought it's gonna just work perfectly. And I glue everything together. My camera was completely out of focus, so I cut this part when I was gluing everything together. But as always, there is just nothing, just tacky glue and putting everything onto the page. And I use my Very Sassy sentiments to finish the page, and here it is. But voila, before I finish, I decided to actually spray it with the hairspray. And yes, it's the transfer of colors is almost non-existent after spraying it well with the hairspray. And so here it is, a fully finished page with my 5 ATC cards, which are not done yet, but you're gonna see them in a moment. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna give you all links to all the products I use in this video in the description box below, together with links to arrtx. And do not forget 16, 17, 18 and 19 July 2024, there is this Prime Day deal with arrtx when you can get 20% discount. That's it from me for now. I'm sending you big hugs. Have a beautiful day and see you in my next video. Bye bye. Thank you.